That's good.
If it starts flickering, I'll get rid of it. I'll be back and forth up here because I have some notes of things that I'm liable to forget. But this is a trip that we took in 2003. We spent 10 days in St. Petersburg, and we'll talk about that at another event. And that was with my cousin, who then took us to Prague for about 3 days. And Carol's cousin picked us up there for another 7 days. So we had 10 days in St. Petersburg and 10 days in Prague. What you're seeing here is the Prague Castle, the Vltava River, which in German is die Moldau. The Charles Bridge is on the left, and you can see the Prague-Chany, which is the castle up on the hill, and we'll get up there and we'll talk about that as well. So there's the bridge is along here. There's a few statues. This is the river. This side of the river is the old town, and the new town is not that new, from 13 or 1400. So not like America where everything is brand new. So Prague was founded in 1306 BC. The bridge was built in 1357 by King Charles IV, and the university, Charles University, was founded in 1347, and it is the oldest university in Central Europe. Forward. Let's see if that works. You have to learn some Czech. This is a sentence in Czech. There are no vowels, so if you're going to play Jeopardy, what was it you buy vowels? Don't buy vowels in the Czech Republic. They're not needed. Wheel of Fortune. Thank you. So this, and there's a Haček. A Haček is the little thing over the sea. They have a lot of little things, diacritical marks. But this says Sturč, Prst, Skurč, Krk. And you roll the R's a little bit in Czech. Does anybody know what that means? Martha probably does.
About a church.
No? It's nothing about a church. I heard Krk. Okay.
Something river?
Forward. It means stick a finger through the throat. The other thing in Czech, they don't use articles, so if you want to say the dog, you just say dog. Or if you want to say throat, you just say throat. So everybody can pronounce that? Close enough. Okay, the places where we're going to be going are all over the place in the Czech Republic. This is the Czech Republic. Poland, we're not there. Poland is up here. Germany surrounds around here. Austria is down here, and Slovakia is over there. The Czech Republic separated from Czechoslovakia, which was made a country after World War I. So that's when the Czechoslovakian nation existed. After the Velvet Revolution, the Czechs and the Slovaks decided to separate. The Czechs called the Slovaks hillbillies, but they have the Volkswagen factory. So don't worry about those names, we'll find them as we go along. This is a map of Prague itself, and the old castle, the Prague-Chany, is the Prague Castle is up here. The lesser town here, the Charles Bridge, Charles University is in there somewhere. The old town is in here, and we'll talk about some of the other places, but it's just an outline that you can see. It's a very big city. There's about 1.3 million people living in Prague itself, and as possibly as many as 3 million people who are living in the surrounds. It's our favorite big city. We've been there a number of times, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the purpose of this is to bring you some of Carol's roots. All of her grandparents were born in the Czech and Slovak area before it was that. It was Austro-Hungarian at the time, so it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This is the Hradčany. It's Pražský hrad. It's the Prague castle complex. And there's a lot of places there. And we came in through this gate, and we went into the art museum, and we went over through, this is the St. Vitus Cathedral, and there's various other things that we'll see as we go along. So there's a treasury we were able to see. Powder Tower is back here, where they kept the powder when they used to have to defend it. The old royal palace is over here, and St. George Basilica is down there. So when Carol and I first went to Prague, we walked everywhere. The only time we took any transportation, we arrived on the train, and we left on a bus to go to the airport to fly back. We saw, when my cousin was with me, that is not my cousin, but we saw the changing of the guard in front of the Prague castle. And this is the St. Vitus Cathedral that is in the castle. It was begun in 1344, and it's the burial site of Bohemian kings and Holy Roman emperors. And they have a relic of St. Vitus' arm in there somewhere. I'm not sure that we saw it. But it has the tower over here on the right. And this is another picture of the edge of it. It's Gothic. You can see the arched arches there. This one is sort of rounded up here, but on this side are the flying buttresses that keep the walls from falling down. St. George slaying the dragon over on the right, and the St. George's Basilica, which is Bazilika Svatý Jiří, began in 920. That's the second place that we went to a concert in 1997. It's a Romanesque kind of a construction. This is the old royal palace, which dates from the 12th century. It's the great hall and entrance on the right. You can see someone entering, but those stairways are very wide and very shallow steps, and it was built that way so that the knights could ride up their horses and come into the great hall to present themselves to the king.
Yeah.
They weren't doing that when we were there. The old royal palace chapel on the right, and this is a view out the windows. Anybody ever heard of the defenestration in Prague? Throwing out the window. In about the 1400s, after Jan Hus, who was the Luther of the Czech people in the Reformation, some of the people were tired of some of the Catholic officials, and they threw them out the window. And that's happened several times. Depending on who's in power, you can throw out the ones you don't like. And nobody gets hurt because you land in a big dung heap. So here's the Charles Bridge. This is the picture you saw as we started off. And this is people on the Charles Bridge. It is a walking pedestrian area only. And the statues are all along. You can't really see the statues very well, but there's some of them there. And on the bridge there are vendors and there are people walking, and they go back and forth. It's a very, very famous bridge from the 1300s. The one before it was wooden, and it got carried away in a flood on the Vltava River. The original statues from the Charles Bridge are stored underground somewhere. We went there with Carol's cousin. I don't know exactly where it was, but they're stored for safekeeping. All the ones on the bridge itself are reproductions, and the ones inside are covered with, draped with canvas or whatever to protect them from the elements. The Old Town Square and Astronomical Clock. This is a very famous square. It's a wonderful place to go. In Czech, there's a couple of words that says "sedět u pivo," which means sit and drink beer. And this is a perfect place to do that. They have wonderful beer. They have all around our cafes and bars, and you can sit there and just people watch all day long. This is the astronomical clock. It was built in 1410. There's a story which may or may not be true, that the man who built it, the emperor was so pleased with his work and he didn't want anyone else to have one of those clocks, so he put his eyes out. And then more of the story says that even though he was blind, he climbed up in there and he gummed up the work so the clock wouldn't work. So for about 100 years it didn't work, and somebody finally fixed it. This is the astronomical clock, and I don't know what all these dials and pointers and everything do, but it's supposed to tell you about where you are at the time of sunset and sunrise locally in Prague, where the planets are, all that other stuff. But you have to spend a lot of time studying it. The area of the astronomical clock is a big place for people to make a lot of money. They're called pickpockets. We were lucky. The only place I've had my pocket picked was in Jamaica. Again, the Old Town Square and the St. Nicholas Church here. This is the first place that we saw a concert when we came to Prague in '97. And there are concerts everywhere, nearly all day long, in the afternoon and evening, in churches and little theaters. There are 2 opera houses in Prague, at least. There may be another one, and there's a number of wonderful venues for orchestras. When we first went to, not first, later when we went to Prague, Carol's cousin's wife got us tickets. She went to the original theater where Don Giovanni by Mozart was premiered, and she went and she asked where are the best seats to see and hear, and she bought us tickets for that place. And so we saw Don Giovanni in the original theater, and a night or 2 later we went to see Dvorak's Kate and the Devil in a separate opera house where that opera was premiered. On the right, this is the Jan Hus statue. Jan Hus was, as I said, the Martin Luther of his time, about 100 years before, and he was not well liked by the Catholics who tried him and burned him at the stake. But the Czechs by then had become, they were Bohemians at the time, but they had become Protestants, and the Catholics didn't like that. So around Prague and in the Czech Republic, there have been wars forever. Some of them are called the Hussite Wars, named after Jan Hus. And this is up the street. It's the Wenceslaw Square, which is Václavský náměstí. And you see an accent in some places. That is not an accent. I don't know how to do it, but the people in the Czech Republic know how to do it. That means drag out that letter a little bit longer when you're speaking. Don't give it an accent, just drag it out a little bit. I've been unable to do that. But in the Wenceslaw Square, there's all kinds of vendors for sausages and all kinds of other things to eat. And it's also a pedestrian walkway, and it's quite a long block with shops all around. Interesting thing about the buildings in Prague. Prague is a World UNESCO site, and the facades of all of the buildings are required to be maintained. And you can do anything behind the facade you would like. So we've been into some really old looking buildings with modern department stores. So they have to put up scaffolding to hold the facade in place, and sometimes they're a little careless on purpose and they let the facade fall over and say, oh dear. But otherwise they're required to keep the facades. This is Carol's cousin and his wife, Yaroslav Kopta and Hanna Kostova. They put the ova on the end of female names in Russia and nearly all the Slavic countries. But they came to pick us up after my cousin was through with us for about 3 days. I'm going to jump back and forth in time, but it doesn't really matter. This was the apartment. Hannah's mother had rented that apartment since 1939 and kept it, and we believe that Yaroslav bought it sometime before we got there after her mother had died. But it was a nice apartment. It was on the top floor. It had a big living area, dining area, and kitchen, coffee maker, important. And it had, there was another bedroom. This was where Carol and I slept, and the balcony is out on the back. And this is a view in the bathroom, and really important for people who've been gone for a week and a half by then. That's a washing machine. So these are views from the apartment. From that balcony, you could walk out and you could look at the old tin church. And you'll see that again later. You may not be able to see, but at the top now, there's little golden balls at the top of all the spires. And up the front of the apartment, this was the scene that you could see of just a big street corner. That was about a block and a half or 2 blocks from the old town square, perfectly situated. Then we're going somewhere else now. This is still in Prague, but this is the Prague. And that is the old castle grounds that was built around the 900s or so and fell into ruin and hasn't been really restored, but it has some of the most important people in Czech history are buried there. And if you look on the right here, I don't know who Jaroslav Hilbert is, but here is Alphonse Mucha. Everybody's heard of Alphonse Mucha, right? No? He was, when you see the, what do they call them? The kinds of art that he did. Art Nouveau? Art Nouveau. He was one of the originators of that style, very, very famous artist in the Czech Republic. And then you can see a couple of Kubelaks. You may have heard of Raphael Kubelak, a conductor and musician from the Czech Republic. And this is a monument for a bunch of other people. I don't know who they are. They're also the grave of Dvořák and Smetana. Those are very famous Czech composers. The Vyšehrad Basilica of St. Peter and Paul was founded in 1070, and like everything in the old days like that, it kind of fell apart and was rebuilt later. This is the television tower, or towers in Prague. And what's really weird is these are like little babies climbing up the tower. There are statues on the sides of this tower. And we went up in the tower, and this is one of the views that you can see out over Prague. Petronka is the museum of the Dušek family. They hosted Mozart when he was finishing his composition of Don Giovanni. And this is very near, or if not in Prague itself, but it's quite close by. Jaroslav took us there. One of the rooms has sort of rustic paintings on the ceiling beams, and this is a ceramic heater for that room. And this was a more elegant room with, I don't know if that was a piano or harpsichord that Mozart worked on, but we toured this museum also. Okay, next we're going to go to Karlstein. Karlstein, and I'll be putting little things on the map so you'll know where we're going to go. There'll be a quiz later. The Karlstein Castle was founded in 1348, as it says, by Charles IV. He was a Holy Roman Emperor-elect and the King of Bohemia. And many of those kings were dual-hatted as King of Bohemia and Holy Roman Emperor, and they made their capital of the Holy Roman Empire for some period of time in Prague. Next, we go to Kutná Hora. And Kutná Hora, as you can see, is a little bit to the east of Prague itself. And there we went to that is the old mayor of New Orleans. We went to the Sedlec ossuary. I had asked my cousin to take us there as one of the side trips while she had us in Prague. And in 1278, some crusader brought back some dirt from Jerusalem, from Golgotha Hill. And so people wanted to be buried in Jerusalem, which had the soil from Jerusalem, so they really wanted to be buried there, a lot of them. 1400, the church was built and it was revised. In 1700, there's skeletons of 40 to 70,000 people buried there. Sedlec is near Kutna Hora. This is inside the ossuary. I don't know if that's supposed to be a representative of where Jesus was buried. Those are all skulls stacked up there. Some guy spent a number of years doing it. This is a shield of Prague in bones. And this is another view inside the ossuary. After the ossuary, we had a little rest stop, and I went to the little restroom area, and it's the first time. There was a little lady there, of course, to collect the money, but it's the first time I was ever asked if I was going to stand up or sit down. It was 1 crown if you were standing, 2 crowns if you were sitting. I've never seen that before anywhere. But look at the bones hanging up here. They're just decorated everywhere. These are bones and another skull necklace. It was really unbelievable. Okay, let's go to Český Krumlov down in the south. Český Krumlov was settled in 1240. Castle was begun shortly afterwards. They mined gold nearby, so it became a very famous goldsmith area and mint. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And that's the Great Wall that we came in to get there. And it's also on the Vltava River. There's the castle itself, and inside, as you walk around, is kind of Rococo instead of Gothic or whatever else. So they've gone through some of the castles and churches, and the outside may remain the same, and they've redone the inside completely. Next we go to Český Budějovice. Can you say that?
No.
I can't either. But Český, of course, means Czech. And the reason we went there was because we went to see this famous city square, and the German name of the town, because it was in the Sudetenland, the German area, it was Budweis. Does that ring a bell with anybody? We have Budweiser people here in the U.S. Okay, off we go. We're going up to Horszica. There should be a little accent on the R there, just to make it difficult to say. When Yaroslav was visiting us a number of years ago when we lived in Citrus County, we were having breakfast, and he was talking and trying to teach us a little Czech, and Carol said, well, how do the old ladies speak Czech when they don't have any teeth? And he said, with great difficulty. But Horszica is part of the family that Yaroslav took us to visit some of Carol's relatives. This is the Horszica cemetery. There you see the R with the little diacritical mark. And the grave on the right is some of Carol's relatives. Let me see what it says. Rodina, which means family, and Kolářová is the Kolář family, and the ova is feminine of the family. So Rodina is a feminine noun, so it's Rodina, family, Kolářová. This was the Horszica family. And if you look real carefully, I'm in the picture twice. I'm up here and I'm back there as well. That's Uncle Steniak. He was the patriarch of the family, and there's 4 generations there of Kolář, Zevers, actually it's Zhever, because there's a little hot check on that one. And Tuneg, the young lady here, is Marketa Tunegova and her son. And this is the newest baby here. So there's Hannah. Carol's cousin from Phoenix is back there because she was with us. Here's Yaroslav and other members of the family. There's Tata Liba. Tata Liba. So she's the aunt. She was Uncle Zdeněk's wife. So we had a good time trying to confuse people by standing next to each other. If you go to a Czech house and they've asked you to come over, and I don't know why Jaroslav didn't know this, they're going to put a spread of food out that would feed an army. But we stopped somewhere on the way to Horzhica and had a wonderful dinner, and then we got to Horzhica and we had to eat to be polite. I was up to the task. Now we're going to go to Skoronica, which is down in the southeastern portion. Skoronica was Frank Grufik's birthplace. He was born in this house, and this is the town center, but Frank is Carol's grandfather, and I don't know if I said, but all four of her grandparents came over more than 100 years ago. They came over around the turn of the 1900s century mark. But he was born there, and that house still stands. The town of Skoronica has their shield here, and one of the things that they do, or did do, maybe still do, in the old days, in Skoronica, the men on horse would ride around in the town, and they would go up to the door, and people would come out and give them something to drink, and here's someone bringing something up, this horse person there. And then this lady, whose name I didn't get, lives in the house where Carol's grandfather was born, and she was telling Jaroslav where we had to go downtown to the mayor's office to look for records. But on the way, we stopped at the Skoronica graveyard and chapel, and Carol related to this is Rodina family, Šmídová, the Smith family. So there was a great-grandmother, Šmídová. So, and we don't know if this is any of them. But you can see again, Františka, the S with the little diacritical mark is a shh. The currently elected at that time mayor had just deposed this lady who had been the mayor of Skoronica. And so she was a little angry about that apparently, so she took all the official records to her house. And we went to see her. We did go see the mayor and ask him about it, and he told her to go to her house. But we sat there in her breezeway. She was going through the records that were all handwritten. There are little books about the size of our exam books that we used to have back in the old days when we used paper and pencil for exams. But here's the mayor going through the records. This is Carol's cousin, Carol's Phoenix cousin, and Carol's cousin Jaroslav. And somewhere, I know there's a bottle of Slivovitz there, because you're always offered Slivovitz when you go to somebody's house. It's like going into a restaurant in Russia. You're offered vodka, and you're supposed to drink it. So next we'll go to Straznica, which is down in the same area of the Czech Republic. Rose Sloboda, Carol's grandmother on the other side of the family, was born in Vienna. And we saw that house when we had a river cruise. We stopped in Vienna and took the subway and made 2 or 3 stops, and we found it. And we found the building where she was born, the apartment building. And we came back in. And most of these places in Europe, if you stop at a bar and have coffee or a beer, you're allowed to use the restroom. So we stopped at a bar, and I asked the people who were running the bar, what language are you speaking? They were Turks, because there's a large number of Turks that now live in and around Vienna and Northern Europe. But her grandmother was born in Vienna and lived and went to school here in this little village of Straznica. So there's a statue of Masaryk. He was the first president of the Czechoslovakia after World War I. And here in Florida, how many people have been to Masaryk town? Oh, 2. Amazing. 3. Wow. Yeah, there's a large Czech area in Mazarek town, and we've been down there several times with Carol's family to relatives and friends, and they put on Czech festivals that are really amazing, and they have fantastic food. It's against the law to have bad food in the Czech Republic. Old walls of Stražnica are here. They were brick walls, and they have gone into disrepair, and I don't think they keep anybody out anymore. And they were in the way of the road in addition. Okay, we're going to Petrov, which is somewhere south of Prague. Petrov was where her grandfather Sloboda was born, and it also has a Czech name. Petrov is German, it's Zvolenov in Czech, and it's so small you can't find it on the Wikipedia or Google Maps, but there is a Petrov, which is a piano manufacturer of well-known and well-respected concert grand pianos. Okay, we went to the town. Yaroslav was trying to show us where everyone was born. Our grandfather lived in that vineyard back when there was a house there. And these are typical houses along the same street. Now let's go to Slovakia. Her grandmother Teresa Grufik was born in Slovakia. So we had to go over there. You didn't have to cross the border, but you had to change money. So this is Sinica. There's their shield with a guy and a sword. Carol's cousins, Yaroslav and Janet and Carol. And there was a World War I memorial to the people from this area who had been lost during World War I. Her grandparents, Grufik, lived in two different cities. They met somewhere. Those cities, they weren't cities, they were villages. They were close together, but they had to go to Militica. This is the church where the great-grandparents Grufik were married, because there was not a church in either village where they lived, and this was a nearby village with a church. The church was locked the day we were there, but it's a cool-looking church. And across the street, you see the maso. Maso is meat. This was a butcher, and at the bottom here, Jitrnica, which we always call Jitrnički. And her grandfather used to make this sausage. It's made with 1/2 pork, 1/2 garlic, more garlic, and some more pork. And it's actually, and barley. It's really a wonderful thing. So we had to buy some of that and take it back to the apartment and cook it up. Now we're going to go up to Friedland. Friedland is a castle we'll see. It's in the far north, and a little peak at the top of the Czech Republic. And if you look out the windows of the castle, you probably can see Germany and Poland. So the Friedland Castle and Manor House from the 1200s and the Manor House from the 1600s. So the castle's up on the hill. Didn't need to do that. Here's the laser. The castle is up on the hill, and then the Manor House is in the castle grounds on the way up to the castle. Yaroslav and Hanna live in Liberec, and they have 1 or 2 flats in Prague. But they also have this, they call it their barn, but it's actually like a cottage that they have out on several acres of land. And so we went out there. They had the fruit growing. This was in September, and this is part of the family, and this is looking around in the land, and their barn, so-called, is back there. He has a great workshop with metal shop and all of that. So he built most of what's out there. Hello? Okay. Now we're going to go to the Seacroft Palace. After sunset at the barn, we were driven to this totally darkened Seacroft Palace, which you see over here. And Hanna and Yaroslav were in the front seat, we were in the back seat. They were whispering back and forth words to the effect of, "Are we at the right place? It's all dark. We're supposed to be here." It turned out to be the right place. And we had a private tour of the palace at night, given by one of the docents. And as we would go into one room, she'd say, "Wait here." She would turn off the alarm, and she'd turn on the lights, and we'd go into the next room. And it was really a fantastic, special event for us. This was the palace of the Dukes de Rohan. The Dukes de Rohan are French, and this is the family that came over in the late 1800s or thereabouts and established their palaces here and other whatever they did to make more money. When I was in France a few years ago, I had a tour of the Duc de Rohan's private, not castle, really fancy house, between fancy house and palace. And he was giving us the tour. And so I said, "Pardon, Monsieur le Duc, may I ask a question?" He said, "Sure." I said, "When we were in the Czech Republic, we went to a house, the Dukes of Rohan." He said, "Oh, those were the rich Rohans." So we left as we came in total darkness from that palace. Meanwhile, back in Prague, Our Lady Before Tin, now you can see the gold orbs at the top of the church, which is from the 14 to 1600s, and here's another view from full on. This picture is taken from the main square in Prague. This picture is taken from the apartment. And that was a wonderful place for us to sleep and stay for about a week, except on Sunday mornings when all the damn bells rang from the church. This is the Kopta family from Prague, and it's amazing. This is the youngest boy. He's now about 24. His name is Tomáš. This is Wojciech, Yaroslav, and Carol. This is Mikhail and Marta. And this is Yaroslav II, Yaroslav II. That was Yaroslav's father and Mikhail's father. And Janet and Hannah. And this boy was almost terminally shy. You could hardly get him to look at you and speak. Of course, we didn't speak very good Czech, and he didn't speak very good English. But this other young guy is really a go-getter. I used to Skype with him in English, and I would help him with his English and correct some of his writing and whatever when he was a young fellow in school. Then he went to the university in Denmark, because all the universities in Europe are free. It doesn't matter where you were born, you can go to any of them that you can get into. And then I got an email or a Skype message from him, and I said, "Okay, where are you now?" He says, "I'm in New Zealand." Yeah. "What are you doing in New Zealand?" He said, "Well, I'm down here with a group of Czechs. It's our sabbatical year to go down there." And he told me one time when he was not much older than this picture that he was going to go to Scotland. I said, "Good luck on your English over there." But they were wonderful to us. Okay, and these are our most excellent tour guides, Hanna and Yaroslav, who are, Yaroslav is Carol's cousin, and his mother used to write Carol's mother at Christmas time a Christmas card in Czech, and they corresponded back and forth. When she died a number of years ago, Yaroslav took up the duty to write to Carol's mother. And then he called one time, or Hannah called, and said, "Yaroslav wants to come to visit." And we said, "Sure, come on." And I said, "Oh, wait a minute, does he smoke?" "No, he doesn't smoke." "Okay, send him on." But as you know, many people in Europe still do smoke, but we didn't have a problem. And his English kept getting better, and our Czech probably didn't improve very much at all. But They were really wonderful guides, and they treated us royally, and like when you go anywhere in Europe, if you're someone's guest, you cannot spend a penny. So he took us all over everywhere, wouldn't let us spend a penny, and we really got to see Carol's roots. So that's the end of my talk, I think. Let's see. Oh yes, so it is. Anyone have any questions? Marguerite.
I'm just wondering how many languages you speak.
I speak English and Spanish, and I have a smattering of a few others that don't do me much good.
You did very well.
That's not on.
Wasn't close enough, I guess. Will. Close.
Thanks for a nice tour.
Real close.
I would think that those gold balls on top of the church spires were part of their lightning system.
I don't know. Had they invented lightning by the 1400s?
My little second cousin is married to a Jim Swoboda, SW, instead of SL. Would that be Czech also?
It is Czech, and lots of time as they came through Ellis Island, they just made us guess at how it was pronounced. But Swoboda is with a W, and Sloboda sounds close like it, so some of them got changed from Swoboda to Sloboda. So, and Carol told me I could, when I first met her, it's an easy way to remember, Sloboda, China. Any other questions?
Right behind you, two of them.
Real close.
I was intrigued by those skulls and bones in that church.
Yeah.
Was there some period in the history where there was genocide or mass killing or something like in Cambodia? They had skulls.
It may have been, some of them may have been from the Black Plague, but a lot of the people knew that this earth, the dirt, came from Jerusalem, so they could be buried in sanctified land if they could get the bodies over there and bury them. And then I guess they kept digging them up and piling them in the church and made art out of it. It's kind of a bizarre art. Other questions?
Right behind you.
Sorry.
Do they have
Real close.
positive or negative population growth?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't really know the answer, but most European countries have negative population growth. Any other questions? Okay,
Just
over
a
here.
thought, because the bones were placed usually in the cathedral. They had scooped out and everything because it was a hallowed place.
Right.
And so that's where all the red bones showed up.
Yeah, so she's saying that it was a hallowed place to bury the bones, and they could scoop out the floor. You would have bones buried underneath the church floor. But I don't know why they have so many of them here in that particular church, but it was an interesting place to go. I had heard of it before we had gotten there, and that's why I asked my cousin to take us there for the 3 days or 4 days we were with her in Prague. So I recommend everyone to go to Prague. It's a wonderful city. It's a long, when we went there in '97 and we went to the first concert I mentioned in the St. Nicholas Church on the square, they had a whole bunch of young Americans there, and I was asking them, well, what are you doing here? Are you studying? No, we're over here making money teaching English to the Czechs. So they have found a niche. My connection to Fernandina Beach is my grandfather lived on the beach there during the war, and we used to go over, and my parents had seen the smoke, and I saw the oil on the beaches from the German submarines sinking ships off the coast of Jacksonville, Fernandina area. My grandfather was the light warden, and at night, he had to go up and down the beach and knock on people's doors and tell them to turn off their lights or pull down their blackout curtains. And all the cars had their headlights painted over with just a little scratched area that you could almost see. It was dimmer than a parking light, I think. But so people weren't driving much at night on the beach over there. Any other questions or comments or whatever? So sometime in the distant future, we'll probably talk about the 10 days that we spent in St. Petersburg. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.